Today we focus on something called Elon Musk and Tesla reverse catfishes the Chinese government. Initially, this is costing $100 billion, but we think that ultimately it'll be a $1 trillion great move. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. The focus, we also want to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. We also want to remind you this is a copyrighted broadcast. Any mention of comments made here is prohibited without permission. So, there's a interesting phenomenon that happened. As you may recall, there was a brief interchange between Elon Musk, a questioner, and one of his coworkers. The question had focused on, well, how long does it actually take to build a manufacturing facility that will actually be able to produce cars in China? And the initial answer provided was approximately 9 months. So when you look at the Model 3 factory initially that was built, they started in January, and they started actually making cars by November of, I believe, 2018. So the question that was out there when asked initially, Elon's actual response was, well, we didn't actually get to scale manufacturing until 1 year in. Now, this is a really interesting back and forth for $100 billion worth of reasons. And so what had happened is, if you look back around this time, we actually did a show when it was announced by Elon that they would be building the Germany and Austin factory, particularly the German factory. What we pointed out was there are many benefits clearly to the German facility being built. For example, there are no European tariffs on those vehicles. You also develop goodwill among Germany, which is the largest economy in Europe, and other German countries that might get Teslas from that facility. So those are actually good benefits. But the problem that we pointed out was that because China is very generous and is eager to get a hold of jobs as well as increase the EV use within country, there's actually a collection of process that the Chinese government has that's designed to increase the number of manufacturing facilities exactly like what Tesla is doing. So we're calling this a reverse catfish process because, as you may recall, we've done a few shows about the fact that the head of the EV process in China when asked why it was that they'd help bring Tesla in instead of just supporting local manufacturers, he indicated that they were doing a catfish process where there was a ship captain in Norway who found that when it came time to bring sardines in, if they were dead, he got one price. If they were alive, he got another. So by dropping a catfish into the pen, he found that the sardines busily trying to get away from the catfish actually stayed alive and garnered a higher price. And so the Chinese government's process, therefore, was to help fund Tesla and bring it to China so that the intensity of that competitive pressure might indeed spur sort of competitive process from the domestic manufacturers. So what we found actually occurred is that obviously there are a large number of sort of Chinese government-funded entities that, because Tesla has its supply chain within country, are able to now acquire sort of many parts, et cetera, that they would not have gotten had Tesla not moved into the country, and are therefore better competitors. Now, what we were kind of surprised by is if you add it up, so let's do a couple of what ifs. if Elon had elected to build one, maybe two new factories in China, by now those factories by themselves would be at least producing 1 million vehicles a year, maybe even more. And because Elon chose not to do that, which is a 1-year process to build and get to scale on production, he then had to wait 2 years plus in order to get facilities built and operating in Germany and Austin, Texas. Obviously, the German facility is not really moving as fast as planned, so it's even more of a delay. But the Austin facility is, in fact, doing test runs of vehicles, as we've covered on numerous occasions. So the question that came up is, why did Tesla turn down perhaps 1 million vehicles, 1.5 or so million vehicles worth of production that could have come out of China, but instead split it between Austin and what's going on in Germany? And so the initial answer that we were coming up with, it didn't make any sense because you're already in China. Why not just optimize the fact that many of your costs are lower in China, and therefore you get the benefit of the lower costs Chinese labor and the helpful government in terms of time to market with products, and therefore it's a win-win all around. Elon, as you know, in fact chose not to take advantage of the plan to go ahead and start building another 1 or 2 factories in China, even though he talked about putting up possibly 5 new facilities in different provinces within China to optimize the power relative to local government officials. So this sort of, again, left the question mark out there. Why would you turn away 1 million cars a year, along with allowing competitors to have more time to come after you? And, think about the market cap increase. If Tesla was at 2 million vehicles, 2.5 million vehicles right now, the value of the company would be very different than it currently is. So there are a lot of beautiful elements to actually building in China and getting it done as fast as possible. Well, the problem that pops up in our mind is the relationship that we've seen evolving between Apple and China. As you know, Apple has approximately 450,000 employees, an entire city that builds its products, particularly the phone. And there have been some interesting requests made of the company, including giving up intellectual property access to the Chinese government to allow Chinese companies to make it easier to compete. And so it's our estimation that Elon was not under any delusions of the fact that he could get a new factory built and start producing more cars rapidly in China. In fact, because the factory that's in Shanghai has a lot of open land there, it might have been 6 months before they could have perhaps built an adjacent factory. And now you have, potentially a couple of million vehicles coming out of that facility. So the conclusion we're coming to here is what I'll call the reverse catfish. So Elon has shown over time a good command of what's called the Freinemi process, where someone could also be a friend on one hand and an enemy of the other. Some notable examples, as you all know, is that Toyota and Daimler Benz provided early work for Tesla and revenue, helping to build EVs for both companies. Both companies sort of have separated from Tesla. I'm told that we may see Tesla allow a skateboard to be used by Toyota, but in general, Toyota has been a good friend. They basically provided a free factory in Fremont to allow the company to build out and even have a possibility of existing. And then they added on providing a RAV4 contract for that vehicle to be built. And now there was revenue to be generated by that helped to keep the company afloat. Same thing happened with Germany and Daimler Benz. As we also know, particularly in Daimler, it was an ugly breakup where Daimler asked Elon to provide a vehicle with the main batteries being used by other Tesla products, and Elon declined. Soon thereafter, Daimler elected to sell its shares and leave the board, and they made some good money, I believe $700 million off of it. But it's an interesting breakup for two companies that in theory were working closely together, and it was a real difference maker on the viability of Tesla. So the open question is, why not just build it in China, make a bunch of money, have the value of the company rocket north? And the answer is control. The Chinese have made it clear that the rules of how they engage billionaires and other companies can change dramatically. And if most of your production is in country, there are requests that Chinese could make of Tesla and Elon that they can't make if the Chinese facilities is one of several production facilities in different countries around the globe. Not to mention sort of Chinese laws can change rather rapidly for or against anyone. And so I bring all this up because, yes, Tesla could have had another 1 million vehicles a year, at least, in production because of the Chinese relationship. But the transfer of intellectual property, the unknown sort of government behavior when it comes to foreign companies, and a recent sort of shift in the Chinese attitude towards sort of individual billionaires that run large companies are all some of the signs that the decision that was right for Tesla was to avoid taking more Chinese largesse to build out more facilities, and therefore not potentially lose the company as they get requests to provide software and other sort of intellectual property that they don't want to share with any competitor, including the Chinese government, via their own manufacturing facility. In fact, sort of the last notable example of this avoid what the Chinese could do is that Tesla actually gets batteries from CATL, LG. They work with Panasonic, and they're building their own batteries. And so the request had been made by CATL, CATL, to actually be able to produce the 4680 battery in line with what Panasonic is doing. And Elon declined, which suggests that, in fact, one of the goals is to keep certain intellectual property out of the hands of certain entities or competitors, that being Chinese competitors / the Chinese government. So we thought this was a really interesting circumstance, because when Elon articulated that it's a 1-year build process in China, it made it quite clear that he was aware of how rapidly they could have put up another facility but chose not to. And this little tete-a-tete cost about $100 billion in various ways, at least, if not more. But it looks like it'll be a sort of a win-win for Tesla, because obviously the Chinese government has not taken over the company and installed leadership or other rules that are draconian. And Tesla is still growing nicely, even though they could have actually been growing faster had they had those productive facilities in China. So I want to say congratulations to Elon on this all working out. It looks like competitors are in a bad enough position that slowing down the growth of the company in this manner didn't end up being too costly. And I actually think it's kind of impressive that he wasn't nervous enough to go ahead and take this option, and therefore reduce the chance that any large competitor might arrive and potentially jeopardize the future of the company. So I think this is an interesting sort of reverse catfish process that Elon is using, where in fact Tesla stays out of the jaws of the Chinese government, but is still performing nicely in terms of what happens. We do think after Germany and Austin are complete that there will be another round of manufacturing, either expand the Shanghai facilities or build a brand new facility in another section of the country to address the usable market of China for EV vehicles, which right now is actually perhaps double that of the rest of the world. So we look forward to your comments on this. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Just a reminder, please take time to like and subscribe. We also want to encourage you we usually do our health tips in this section of the show. The first one I wanted to remind you on is to try to go to bed and wake up at the same time for a couple of weeks. This allows your body to get into a circadian rhythm, and the longer you maintain the same steady rhythm, you'll find that you get better rest, you'll be more alert, and you'll be able to study your own body process to get sort of better yield out of your days, both sleep and at awake. Another component of this to consider is some kind of a 15-minute to 30-minute nap between noon and 3 p.m., which mirrors your deep sleep time at night, is another sort of addition to this process to consider. We also want to remind you of another of our health tips is prior to lovemaking, don't eat more than a salad. This will allow your body to not have huge blood flow to your stomach, and that'll be available to other extremities. And then we also have several other health tips that you'll see below that might be helpful as you go through your process. Any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehitrot Hebrew, Choda Hafiz, Farsi, Strasice, Russian, Ni hao ma Chinese, Konbanwa Japanese, Hey Do Swedish, good day our friends in Australia, Salam, and Namaste Hindi. And in Jamaica we say, Nuff respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, and bye for now. Beethoven, Ode to Joy. Have a great day and bye for now.